Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's show, and we are going to be looking at choosing the right tenant and how you could really pick the best from the best. And there is ways and means of doing that. There are so many really good tenants out there, and we're going to hopefully show you tips that will help you be able to find them. Now, so much does really hinge on choosing that great tenant for your rental property, and whether that's coupled with their behaviour and or their relatability, it will really directly impact, your cash flow and your investment, and the state of mind of your financial choice that you're making for the tenant that's going to be in your property. And that choice will be one of the most important decisions that you make as a landlord. So with so many tenants out there, many of whom are perfectly, they could come across really well, really charming, it can be hard to know who is actually genuine and who is right for your property. And that's where a really thorough process comes in. Kerin, I'm sure you'll agree with me, getting that right tenant. I mean, that whole process at the beginning of a tenancy and the whole letting process is so important anyway. But finding that right tenant is so important, and there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that obviously we factor in finding the right person. And I'll always say to the landlord, it's not about putting the first person in, it's about putting the right person in. So hopefully we've got some tips today that'll help people understand the best ways to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you say, it's not about the first person, it's about the right person. And that's a time-sensitive thing as well. You don't want this prolonged period at the beginning, but it needs to be a relative amount of time to be able to properly find and reference and vet a person. And taking shortcuts can really lead to costly problems later on. So, as I say, with today, we've created some, essential tips and potentially a guide for choosing that great tenant. And these are all proven processes, and we have actually tried and tested them, and they do work to find the perfect match. We're going to explore, what actually makes a great tenant, that pre-viewing process, a pre-qualifying stage that we have, and we've found in recent years that's provided us with initial feedback from tenants has been, it's worth its weight in gold to be specific. But we're also going to be look at revealing a tenant's character, and this is where I always say, somebody can be really good on paper, but when you it's meeting them in person and being able to gauge a person on a face-to-face level and knowing the right things to ask and look out for. And the background checks and things as well, we're going to cover that today. That's a really important one. And then making a legal choice. So there's some legalities and things that we're going to cover at the end, and that's always important. People tend not to spend quite a lot of attention on the maybe legal side of things, and it's the one that could catch you out the most. So getting this decision right at the beginning is the best way to ensure your property is a successful and profitable investment, and also having you provide good homes and properties for tenants. So let's not leave any stone unturned this morning, and we're going to kick off with, what actually does make a great tenant? Kerin, I'm sure you could tell us fairly quickly, but we'll try and obviously get as much information as we can. What makes a great tenant, Kerin?
So one of the things you just mentioned there is making a legal choice. Obviously, it's your property, it's your investment. You have to make sure you're not only finding the right person, but obviously making sure everything is done legally correct. It is a very legal process, so making sure everything's done as it should be. So as well as finding someone that you can trust, choosing a tenant is about renting your property to someone who is legally allowed to live there, as well as avoiding any illegal discrimination. So that is very much something in there. You have to be very, we'll say, open-minded when it comes to picking out a tenant and making sure that you're not discriminating against people, but still finding yourself the right person for the property. So It does make it essential to have a well-honed selection process that's fair, transparent, and meets the relevant law. So some of your biggest legal considerations to take into factor is tenants must be checked against the UK government sanctions list. And so this is obviously based between Scotland and England. So for any English landlords that are watching as well, you do for rental homes in England, you also need to make a right to rent check on any non-UK citizens.
Yeah, just to be clear, remember we do cover what England and Scotland are different. So
yeah, we've got different laws just to make it even more confusing. But it is illegal to discriminate against any tenant based upon their specific characteristics like race, religion, beliefs, gender, identity, disability, pregnancy, or sexual orientation. So making sure that you're not discriminating is obviously a key factor in this. I always say to a landlord, somebody could be pink for all that I care, as long as they are paying the rent and looking after the property.
yeah, and you'll find, I mean, obviously us as agents, we do very try and stay very neutral in that aspect, and do not judge people on their background and things as well. But I have come across it in the past, and some landlords who self-manage and things, they can be quite discriminatory, and it's a good thing. And you can't be seen to do that, and that's why I think if you've got an agent doing it, they will make all those decisions for you. If you've got certain views and things, it doesn't really matter. Like you say, they could be pink, they could be blue, they could be anything. It doesn't matter as long as they are, a respectable person that looks after the property, pays the rent, and is a good communicator. That's all we care about.
Yeah. So, however, you can say no to anybody that is rude, vague, difficult, or leaves you feeling uneasy, as long as your refusal has demonstrated nothing to do with any of these protected characteristics. So again, if you've got somebody in for that viewing and they're not giving you a good first impression, I think a lot of people maybe don't realise that coming for a rental viewing is effectively like doing a bit of an interview, and you should really be putting your best foot forward in that situation. But some people can be quite rude, or like say, they can make you feel a bit uncomfortable, and that's ultimately not what you are looking for in a tenancy. You want somebody that is going to be a good fit, not only in your property, but also in the community as well. We want somebody that's going to fit in with the neighbours, not cause disturbances. So getting that initial feeling for yourself could be how your neighbours end up feeling about them as well, if they're not setting themselves off to a very good first impression.
Do you know, we're going to use this is a really good example actually just now, talking about people being rude and being kind of abrupt and things as well. This is something that we come across, not people being rude, but when at the moment we have got an exponential amount of inquiries coming through for every property, and it's much like, on par with what we've seen at the other side of the pandemic and lockdown, and that surge, and we have less amount of stock at the moment, and we're seeing those kind of numbers still looking, and there is a multitude of people looking, and there's lots of great people, potential great tenants and people looking and things, but it's sometimes physically not possible to every single inquiry. We do every single inquiry get some sort of response. Whether that's a response to the initial email inquiry or speaking to someone on the phone, and then we lay out the pre-qualifying stage, which you're going to talk about in a wee while, Kerin. But we offer that to everyone, but we do make it clear one property could only take one tenant. And if we've got, up to sometimes, we've seen like up to 90, 100 inquiries and things, it's just bonkers. And although we endeavour to try and accommodate everybody, it's just not humanly possible. And we have found the feedback sometimes from that initial correspondence that there's not, people getting very impatient about obviously viewings and possibly not being able to view. And if we really back to them, look, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to accommodate you with viewing, other people have viewed, blah, blah, and people could get quite irate about that and quite on the defensive about it. And that's when I think they shoot themselves in the foot, because although we would have gladly considered them and kept them in the loop for other similar properties and things, they kind of take themselves off the list when they come back with that, defensive, you've not offered me the same opportunity type thing, when we have to the best of our ability. I mean, fill me in a wee bit more on this, Kerin. I know that it's a problem that we have, and people coming back being rude and things just really just kind of you put a line through your name, because we don't have to deal with people like that. We've got hundreds of people going.
So as you say, we can have one property and we can easily have about 100 people that have inquired about it. So as you say, everybody gets that response and gets put onto what we effectively call a bit of a waiting list for it, because there are so many people looking. But as you say, when you have that many people that would be happy to come and see the property and would make great tenants. When people, I understand that obviously people can get a bit, it can be frustrating because if you've been looking for a while and you feel like you're not getting anywhere, but in life you get a lot further with sugar than you do with, I'll not say it, but the alternative. And when people are coming on the phone and being rude, it's not setting themselves in a good example. And maybe that frustration is just not being demonstrated very well. Whereas if somebody comes on the phone and you can sympathise with them in that situation, but it depends on their delivery of that as well as to what kind of impression that they're given to being like, right, okay, let's do what we can to help this person, or that's maybe not what we're looking for. Because ultimately as well, when you're a tenant, you have to have some patience. There is going to be maintenance aspects that come up. You're going to have to factor in tradesmen needing time to get out, maybe parts needing to get in. And it's like, if you can't show any patience on obviously setting up a viewing, what are you going to be like if your boiler stops working?
Yeah, it's a big red flag, unfortunately. So although, like you say, we fully appreciate waiting and the search for a rental property in this market can be challenging, it can be frustrating. You know, we've had people come to us and they say, we've lost out on so many opportunities, and we do try our best to try and accommodate them. But to lose your patience with an agent because possibly you've been refused elsewhere and you feel like it's just the same process over and over, we do sympathise. But at the end of the day, you do need to keep your cool. It's the only way to further yourself in that situation. And unfortunately, it's just we have a lack of supply and a really unprecedented demand in the market at the moment, and that's the way it goes. So we will endeavour to do as best we can for everybody that applies, but only one person could go in one property. So that's a bit the bottom line, to be honest. Did you wrap up on legalities, Kerin?
Well, just your final notes for that. So we do have a link, obviously, that we can make available for you for the best way to set up your tenancy. But the paperwork will have a huge impact. So ultimately keeping everything legally protected from unnecessary complications and penalties as well is obviously quite a key stage when you're going through this initial process of setting up the tenancy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that link will be in the blog attached, and you can click through that, and that's got a lot of good tips on it. And it'll also have the vlog, the online vlog that we've done attached to that as well, and also the podcast as well. So you could listen, you could watch, you could read, whatever. So a lot of good information on that, which will elaborate a bit more on the legalities and setting things up properly. Great tenants, as we were saying, you know, in our experience anyway, the best tenants share, you know, a few fundamental qualities that make them, you know, that make that tenancy with them easy, and it makes it enjoyable, and also it makes it financially sound as well. And in order to recommend a person like this to a landlord, we need to look for these qualities within them. And the first one right up there, obviously, is paying the rent on time and in full. And this is the bedrock of any successful tenancy, with the largest knock-on effect to the landlord. So first and foremost, you know, there is very rare instances where you're not required to pay your rent. That is something that you should really stick to on time and be quite consistent with that. It will demonstrate not just for your current tenancy, but for your further on tenancies, you know, because that will follow with you. But a good payer, they always pay on time. That is something that will put you in a good steading with applications if you are trying to get through that application process with any agent. The second thing is looking after the property and care of the home that they live in. Good tenants treat a property as their own, and so they should. While that tenancy agreement is in place, that is their legal residence, and that's where they live. And we're very much, and all our landlords as well, that's their home for that duration, and they should be made to feel that way while in it. So keeping it clean and keeping it tidy and looking after it and having a bit of pride in it, again, is something that will follow you as a tenant through an application process. Keep it clean, keep it well maintained, reporting any problems promptly to your agent or your landlord. If there's an issue, even if you think it's the slightest thing, let us know. Let your landlord know if they're self-managing or whatever, because it could be the smallest thing, but it could be nipped in the bud really quick and then stopped from being a bigger problem later on. And if you do have any issues at all, be quite accommodating and try and be accommodating with easy access for contractors or landlords to fix problems as well. There's no point in reporting a problem and something wrong and then not allowing free access for contractors or people to come in to fix it. I mean, that's not something we do have a great deal of issue with, Kerin, but I mean, I know it's something that comes up within the industry.
Yeah, sometimes as well, just like you say, there's what's the point in reporting an issue if you're not going to let somebody in to fix it? So you have to be accessible for obviously allowing contractors in. Your landlord, maybe, depending if they're in a sort of trade, it might be viable for them to come in and have a look at it. So making sure that you are reporting things and then also letting things get fixed.
Yeah,
definitely. Or
definitely.
simple things as well, just being conscious that you do, as a tenant, still have responsibility for fixing aspects in the house for simple things like changing light bulbs, batteries and smoke alarms, pressurising boilers,
You were going to say
including
that.
radiators. So making sure that you know as a tenant your responsibilities as well, because if you're going to your landlord for every single thing that is actually, you could be sorting yourself, minor things obviously, it can be quite frustrating and obviously can kind of diversify that relationship with your landlord if it becomes strained with things like that. So knowing what you're responsible for as a tenant is quite key as well.
Yeah, and I think some people may think, well, I don't know how to bleed a radiator or top up the pressure, or I'm not able to change a light bulb. Now, if you're not able to get up and change a light bulb, then that's different. But things like, if you're not sure how to top up the pressure in your boiler or bleed your radiator, ask your agent. They will show you. I mean, we will happily show people and educate them so that they can do it, because it saves time. Because pressurizing boilers is something that is quite a common thing. I had one actually just recently, and it was a guy, and obviously we're heading into the winter time and cooler nights and cooler mornings at the moment, to be fair. And the boiler has dropped pressure when he's tried to put it on, because obviously it's not been fully used for a few months. So topping up pressure was necessary there. So as a tenant, necessary thing. But if you're unsure, your agent will, I'm sure, happily show you how to do that.
Alternatively, the internet is a great tool. You can literally put in your make and model into YouTube, and you will probably find somebody that's talking you through exactly a step-by-step video on how to top up the pressure on your boiler as well, because there is help available out there, not only from your agent but at your disposal as well. And a quick Google of something could probably save you a lot of back and forth potentially if you're having to go to your agent about it, for them to have to talk you through it when you could have just Googled it in the first place.
Yeah, YouTube videos are just amazing, and we've actually got some of our own YouTube videos as well. And any proactive agent will have these to help you troubleshoot through that kind of situation. If it's if it's over the weekend or whatever, if it's not during office hours and you have an issue, these kind of things are brilliant to help you through. Another quality, just while we're talking about qualities of the great tenant and things. So being a good neighbour as a tenant, be a good neighbour. I mean, a great tenant is mindful and respectful of those around them and in the neighbouring properties. They avoid disruptive behaviour, excessive noise, littering, keeping their garden tidy and things. These are all things that, a lot of, respectable people think, well, that's just the normal, but then it's not for everyone. And again, I think it all ties back into, if you are a person who rents, and we are very much, I would, in my opinion, we are very much in generation rent, and a lot of people choose to rent and will choose to continue to choose to rent for years to come. So you want to have that good feedback to follow you. And, a good payer looks after their home, great neighbour, not disruptive, very tidy. These are all things that will follow you. And we find that when a tenant who meets all of this criteria, we know that they are laying the foundation for a positive and long-lasting and stress-free tenancy with us. And we will feed that on to the next agent or landlord if they have to move on at some point in time, if they've had that, we've had that experience with them. So that's a really good tip, I think. Just be mindful and have those really good qualities as a tenant, and it will put you right up the top of the list. And then talking about the list and that whole process and that whole, the qualifying stage. I mean, it's pre-viewing screening here, but we call it, between us, Kerin, it's a pre-qualifying stage that we do. And this is we do that before people even view and things as well. But run us through some of that and how it's beneficial.
Yeah, so obviously just now the demand for rental homes is so high and inquiries just flood in. As soon as the property goes online, the phones going, the emails are going, it is just constant. And you can get people that are like, I was one of the first to inquire, and it's like, yeah, but so was about at least 10 other people that are on the ball with it. So as quick as you think you are, there's usually other people as well. So you do need to have, especially as an agent, a strong screening process to see who's going to be a good fit or who's not going to be a good fit, before anyone even steps through the door. And it's a good point for our landlords as well, that anybody that is stepping foot into their property has already gone through this pre-qualifying stage, so they should have that initial compatibility with the property. And as an agent as well, it gives you a bit of background on it, you know what points to kind of be talking to somebody about, and also just kind of, I think we talked about this recently, it's a bit of a strange concept because it's a stranger in either your home or a home that as an agent you're in. So it's good to have a bit of background. Yeah. So it's good to have a bit of background on the person that you're going to be meeting with as well. So by asking the right questions from the very start, we can quickly and efficiently determine whether a viewing should happen. And here's what exactly the initial stage kind of comprises of. So we have a list of questions that we fill in, that we get people to fill in, that gives us a bit of background to assess that initial suitability for the property. Now, this is just obviously per property that they're inquiring about. Different properties they could be more suitable for than others. So it's a good way to filter that down as well if they're looking maybe at multiple properties. So we're obviously trying to establish that basic demographic. So how many adults are going to be there, how many children will be in the property, if they have any pets as well, if it's going to be pet-friendly property, or if they've got maybe like a pet, or if they have multiple pets, establishing that as well. And likewise, number of adults and children, obviously in Scotland, we have to watch and make sure that you have a HMO license if you have a house of multiple occupants. So if you've got, for example, 3 friends wanting to stay together, under a private residential tenancy, that's not going to be suitable. Whereas if you've got a family, then that's fine. But again, establishing how many children they have so the property is not going to be overcrowded. You would be surprised of the amount of people that would like to squash all of their children into one room. They have far too many, and we're like, no, that is overcrowding. You can't do that, I'm afraid. Yeah. And again, it's more wear and tear on a property as well. So there are good things to establish as to who's going to be living in the property versus the size of the property, how many bedrooms it has, how many reception rooms, bathrooms as well, even for longevity of a tenancy. If you have a big family living in a house that's got 1 bathroom, realistically, 1, that bathroom's going to get a lot of wear and tear, and 2, it's going to be a lot of, how long are they going to last in that property before they need somewhere that's got maybe 2 bathrooms or even a WC just to give them that
an extra toilet. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Another strong one that we look at is their financial position. So what their monthly salary is it stable? How long have they been in work? Are they still in a probation period for it? If they've only been there less than 6 months. Do they have a guarantor in case of a low or intermittent income? So a guarantor is a good safety option there for a landlord, and it demonstrates as well if that person's got somebody that is willing to financially act, effectively co-sign a lease for them and have that financial responsibility. You can tend to find if people's, for example, somebody is a bit younger, it's their first rental property, they don't have a landlord reference. So it can be good to get a guarantor just so there's that extra bit of security there. But if someone's parents aren't willing to do that for them, it's like, well, yeah, I've got some red flags there. So it's definitely a good thing to be looking into. And again, another one is someone's reason for moving. So when and why are they looking to move? Are they maybe upsizing, downsizing, change of area? And another one is how, as I say, how long are they looking to rent for as well? There are no fixed terms in Scotland. So the leases are just on a month-to-month basis. So you could have somebody that effectively moves in and gives you 28 days notice a few days later and be out within effectively a month. So we try and establish somebody that is looking long-term if that's what the landlord is happy with. So again, it's how long's a piece of string situation. You never really know. Life changes, people's circumstances change. However, if you've got somebody that's at least intention as long-term, hopefully that's how it pans out.
That's a really important one for us here in Scotland, especially with the private residential tenancy. Like you say, there isn't any fixed term. We can't do fixed terms like we used to do in the shop of sure tenancy in Scotland. And for the best will in the world, we can't hold anybody to that, but we can try and establish to the best of our ability with some element of certainty that, you know, these people have agreed they're going to be here 2 years, or they're going to be maybe here 3 years and a bit more, or they're only wanting a year. So then it gives everybody a better picture. We're all on the same page. This is generally how long the tenancy is going to last. It could go a little bit longer, or whatever, and everybody kind of knows where they stand. And I think for the most part, Kerin, I think maybe once, maybe twice since the private residential tenancy come into force in December 2017, we've only had 1 or 2 instances where people have moved in and very quickly had to move back out again with the 28 days or 4 weeks notice. But that was extenuating circumstances, and we understood why, and so did the landlord. But apart from that, if we establish they're going to be here a couple of years or whatever, then generally that's what they stick to. And an average tenancies in our stock at the moment is around about 4 years.
Yeah, so it's good as well. Another thing to factor into when you're looking at how long you think someone's going to be there is like their rental history, well, their address history. If you're doing a credit check on them, it should pull up linked addresses so you can see how many different properties they've been linked to in their obviously adult life. And if there's quite a lot there, it is giving you a bit of a background that they are a consistent mover. Whereas if there's only a few, then it means that you don't have there's not as much of a risk as well of obviously people being in that situation where they are just going to be in and out of another property.
Yeah, definitely.
But making simple checks like these before booking a viewing means we can shortlist suitable candidates to show the property and minimise a waste of time for everyone. Again, if you're taking your time to come and see a property and do a viewing for it, you at least want to be in with a chance of getting it. Whereas if we showed everybody that inquired, everybody that goes to this pre-qualifying stage, if we took all of them to the property, that's an even higher chance of someone not getting it, because there's going to be even more people.
There for a very long time doing viewings.
Yes, very much so, because we do like to give people the chance to obviously see it on their own as well. Some agents might do block viewings where they've got everybody in, but we like to give people their own chance to have a look at the property, and it gives us a chance to get to know them that bit better as well and ask them some questions, see if their questions match up to what they've said in this pre-qualifying stage as well. So we'd be there a long time if we let everybody view.
Yeah, and that just comes into what I'm just going to talk about in a minute. And like you say, we do blocks of viewings, but we have space, it's like 10, 15 minutes apart. So people get that individual opportunity to have a look and have a chat with us as the agent on site. And that's where then you look at revealing the tenant's character and having that conversation. Because like you say, you could do this pre-qualifying stage and things, and everything could look brilliant on paper. And the person that walks through the door or drives up in the car can be completely different from what's on the paper, or what's depicted in your mind from the person on the paper. And from first contact, and then through to their behaviour at the viewing, tenants leave plenty of clues about who they are, and these are some of the techniques that we would use for reading between the lines and to gauge who we would then recommend to the landlord. Because ultimately it's the landlord's decision based on the information and things, but we are privy to give our feedback on who we feel is more suitable. And that is very much a big part of what we do. Hence that we tell people, treat this like an interview, because it basically is, because we're going to feedback what we get from that to the landlord, who ultimately makes the decision. Ask casually, in conversation like you would anybody. Ask about their life. Their work, reasons for them moving, their neighbourhood that they are looking in. That's a great opportunity to kind of create that openness of conversation and get a feel for their lifestyle and their motivations and things for moving. So just that conversation can reveal quite a lot about who the person is, where they're coming from, why they're coming here, and that gives you a good start off initial impression of who this person might be. Now, this is another one that's maybe a bit controversial, and I've heard it, but checking social medias and things for how they look after possibly where they currently live, because you will have a lot of pictures and things. People do this, agents may do this and things as well, but social media could tell a lot about a person, about who they are, how they put themselves across. And it might even have the presence of possibly unsuitable pets that they've not disclosed on there as well. We are very pro-pet agents. People are more than entitled to have pets, and we encourage every landlord to consider any pets on an individual basis. But if they're not suitable for the property, if you've got 3 dogs, it's a 1-bedroom flat, no. But as long as the landlord is happy and the tenants look after the pet and it's in the right setting, then we are happy as well. Or possibly as well, you spoke about who's going to be living in the property as well, Kerin. Checking these kinds of things could maybe pick up on possibly undeclared housemates and people that may end up living there. We have had that in the past where people have ended up living in properties that weren't actually supposed to be there. but we do pick up on it. But it's better to get it in the first instance as well. And also, Kerin, on you go. You're going to say
just
something.
On that, inspections are another good way to pick that up as well. Just making sure that who's meant to be living in the property is living in the property. If you're meant to only have a female there and there's male socks lying around, which is what I had the other day, I was like, I think you either have a partner in here or someone that's not meant to be here. So there's little giveaways as well, or even like toothbrushes. How many toothbrushes are there? Is there just one that's meant to be, or maybe have they moved a partner in? And ultimately, if they have, then that's okay. But obviously, as the agent, you need to be made aware of that. And ideally go through the referencing process with that person as well, because as an agent, we want to have at least checked out everybody that is going to be living in the property.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to have guests and people stay for a short period of time or whatever, but you don't need to, check in every single. But if you've got somebody in there for a period of time that's going to be living there for a period of time, you need to make your landlord or your agent aware. And then, coupled with the things that I've already covered, is looking for signs that they have a genuine interest in the property for their long-term home, and not just something that's possibly, it's just a stopgap, whatever they're doing. That goes hand in hand with how long are you planning to live here and why are you coming to live here. But you can pick up on that from the comments they make and the questions that they ask as well, not just questions that you ask. Be very aware of what they're asking you and think about the background of where that question's come from or why they're asking it, and it can paint a bigger picture. So it is very much reading between the lines.
Yeah, very much so. You need to know what questions to ask.
And I think finally on that, on that revealing that tenant's character, we think about whether we can build a strong relationship with them as well. Are they very approachable and relatable and transparent? While all the data that we collect on a tenant, income and all the rest of it is really essential, in our experience, your intuition plays a valuable role when deciding whether a tenant is a perfect fit for a property or not. And they could come with the best references and the best financial backing and guarantors or all of that. And if you meet a person and feel like they're not right for the property, then I think that is a very strong gauge to listen to, definitely. People that are great on paper might not always be great in real life. So these things really need to marry up, in my opinion, to make a good tenancy.
And doing those background checks is going to be key for that. Obviously, once you've met that person and you've got a good feel for them, obviously in person, you have to go through the actual referencing process. The viewing is just one part of it. The actual application process is the second part. So once you've accepted an offer from a prospective tenant, it's time to dive deeper into their position to protect your interests and avoid those sleepless nights. Yeah. So it can be tempting to cut corners and save a few pounds, but thorough referencing is worth every penny. And the key details we'll verify before creating a tenancy will include their affordability, as we say. Yeah. So requiring evidence that the tenant's monthly income, commitments and spending habits leave them comfortable enough to pay rent. So making sure that, one, their income is what they say it is, so getting their proof of income in. And bank statements are a great way to check that, especially for people that perhaps are maybe first-time renters. You can see if they're sitting very close to either their limit or their overdraft and they're not actually being paying rent, council tax, utilities. It's like, how are you going to afford that on top of what you're already spending your money on?
Living and spending, yeah.
And likewise as well, for people that are paying the rent, it's, you can see if you've got bank statements whether they've actually been paying the rent and been paying it on time as well, and not sitting significantly on their overdraft. Another one is their credit checks and ID checks. So confirm that the tenant is who they say they are and conduct a full search of any unpaid debts, CCJs or bankruptcies. So this is quite an important one there, just making sure there's no adverse credit. And even for getting their ID is quite good for the, as we said before, like the legality side of it, making sure that lease is done in their legal name, spelt correctly. If there's a spelling mistake in it and you are in a position that maybe you've had to go put the tenant out, if that name is not spelt correctly, then you could have lost your case already.
Yeah, very much so. Be very conscious of the detail. I was just thinking, you're talking about county court judgments there, and there was one recently. I think you done a viewing and met the person. They were fine. We done the pre-qualifying, was fine. The viewing was fine, and then the reference check come back. And did it not have 4 county court judgments on it? Was it 4?
Yeah.
It was never disclosed and never discussed. So yeah.
Yeah, so you never know what's hiding in that credit check, so always make sure that you do
Always
it.
has to be done, yeah.
And another good one is landlord references. So we can contact previous landlords to verify each tenant's history of paying rent, looking after the property, and overall behaviour. A good thing to ask is, would you rent to them again? If an agent says yes, then obviously you can tell they've been quite a good tenant. However, if they're saying no, but my piece of advice when it does come to the landlord referencing is, obviously when it's coming from an agent, I would say it's a bit more creditable. They're an agency, they've got multiple tenants, but if you've got somebody that's put down a private landlord, make sure it is actually the registered landlord for that property and maybe not just a friend that they've put down as a point of contact for it. So you can do that by checking landlord registration, making sure the name that is registered for the landlord matches up vaguely, at least with the email address that they've perhaps given you to contact, or the phone number that they've given you, so you can make sure you're getting a reference from the right person.
I think another thing to watch as well, and I think though, if it's this type of person, then it's going to come up in your pre-qualifying or your meeting with them. But if you get to the landlord reference and it's a self-managed landlord, if they want to get rid of this tenant, they may give you a good reference. So be careful of that. But I think if they're that bad a tenant that they want rid of them, I think you would pick it up in other ways anyway. But just always be quite vigilant, I think.
Yeah, so taking the time to get this right is an essential step in every tenancy, giving you confidence that you've chosen the right tenant and a reliable resident as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many different aspects there that we've covered, but I think people might be like, right, okay, well, what's the next step then? And I think you need to think about choosing a great tenant. Like we said, it does take a little bit of patience. Don't try and do it quite quickly and just pick the first person. But there's a methodical process to that. You can approach it really methodically. And like we were saying there, obviously, there's lots of great tenants out there. You do the pre-qualifying with them, meet them at the viewing, ask all the right questions, then do a proper reference and check. And you should cover a lot of bases with that. And that really pays off. And if you're unsure about doing any of that, then you can always reach out to us and or your local agent if they're quite proactive and good at doing that process, and they will be able to help you. You should really, I think, even if you're self-managing, I think in the initial stages, you'll more than likely have an agent advertising the property and putting the tenant in place for you. And you should make sure that they're doing all these steps at the beginning, because what you don't want is for them not to do that, and then you will be left managing a tenant that's not been referenced up or checked properly at the beginning. And if you've got any questions about that, you can feel free to jump in the comments box, or I think my direct email's in the blog attached. You could email me directly, or you could direct any questions to Kerin, of course, as well, and we would be happy to answer any of them. But I think that's it for this morning. I think we've covered quite a lot. We could go on, but I think that's the fundamental parts of it. And I think it's just to kind of get that point across that there's lots of good tenants out there. We do have a lot of people looking at the moment. We have stress that we do try and accommodate everyone, and but there is a really methodical process to find and put in place really good tenants, and that's what we've covered this morning. Anything else you want to add to that, Kerin, before we finish up?
No, I think obviously, as I say, it's a property is one of your biggest investments. So why would you put somebody in that has not had all these checks done? It is so hard to get the wrong tenant out now. So making sure that you're trying to eliminate any risk in the first place is key. Obviously, your ongoing management of it is also very important, but trying to find your right tenant in the first place is one of the key things that you'll do on your buy-to-let journey.
Yeah, and I think, and you raised a really good point there, and it was brought up by a trainer to us recently. And it's like anyone who's inquiring for a property, and whether that's lettings, whether it's sales or whatever, they're complete strangers to you as an agent or as a buyer or a seller or a landlord or an investor. So they need to be really transparent and provide all this information so you can build up this picture of who they are, where they're coming from, and what their intention is in terms of living in the property. And if you get all that right, there's so many great tenants out there, and it can be quite a good experience if done properly.
Yeah.
Good. Right, thanks for that, Kerin. Thanks for your insights. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. You can, of course, catch up on the reruns and the podcast, and you can click through and read the blogs and contact us directly if you have any questions. Until next time, we'll leave it there this morning, and thanks for tuning in.
See you later.
Bye, Kerin.